You're not required to, but if you have access to it and would like to follow along, we're currently in the OneNote file of the modal node system, MNS presentation 1165 Excel, scale degree key conversion to absolute mode numbering. One of only a few presentations thus far, but we plan on adding plenty more to it shortly. Also noting that in this presentation, we can spend all of our time on the theory, but we do have another presentation by the same name and number where we spend time actually building the tables in Excel, practicing our Excel tools as well as the music theory tools. We now want to think about the possible problem of communication of musical information with others, possibly our bandmates, for example. One of the issues that always comes up is going to be what is the scale that we are playing in and what are the notes in that scale and how are they mapped out on the fretboard. So for example, if someone says, hey, we're playing in A minor, it's pretty easy to know what the tonic is, but sometimes it's a little difficult to know the 7 notes, the collection of notes, and how they're mapped out on the fretboard. To analyze this, let's take a step back and think of our analogy that I keep on wanting to hammer home, that being that the fretboard is a map of our territory. I'm going to compare it to the globe here. There's going to be 7 destination points, 7 in essence continents that we want to get to. There's 12 actual locations, but the non-destination points are like the oceans. We're going through them. We might touch in on them, but we're going through them to get to the continents, which there are only 7 of. And then if we imagine our vantage points from space, we can see our global fretboard would shift around. It shifts around. So all the continents are shifting around. I'm going to name those continents by the name of them. It's going to be Europe. It's going to be the Americas and whatnot and so on. Those are going to be the modal names as they're shifting around. However, I need to know what vantage point I'm looking at it from space so I know which continent to look at, where it is from my perspective. That is going to be the 1 through 12 on the alphabet. So if I say that we're playing in the collection of notes to my vantage point in the key of C, then I'm going to say it's going to be key of C and the 7 continents are going to be in that location relative to the key of C, right? That's going to be the idea. So once I'm in there, once I'm in that collection of notes, I'm not going to look at it by the note name anymore because the note name is there just to tell me what my viewpoint is. Now I'm going to look at it by the continent names. In our case, that's going to be analogous to the modes, right? So the Ionian mode or absolute Nashville number music system number 1, the Phrygian number 3, the Mixolydian number 5. So once I'm into the system, I want to look at the actual continents in a way that aren't going to be moving. So that's going to be the general idea. So notice if someone says, hey, we're going to be playing in A minor, what's the problem here? It's that I don't name, from my vantage point in space, I don't name the collection of notes by the minor degree, by the 6th. The collection of notes would be best and easiest to tell people as it is done in like a Nashville music system. Hey, the related major that's going to tell you the collection of notes is the key of C, but we are going to be focusing in not around that continent on the key of C, which would be the Ionian, but rather we're going to be spending most of our time on the continent of the 6, which is the Aeolian. So that would be a lot more specific, right? It'd be a lot easier on people to say, hey, look, we're doing the collection of notes related to the key of C, C major if you want to call it that, and then we're going to be focusing around the modal center of the 6th of that collection of notes, which is the Aeolian, right? That's how we would basically say it. But no one says it that way, right? People typically say we're in the key of A minor, and they basically change the continent names. So if this was Europe and this is America, right? Now they say, well, now this is Europe and that's America because they changed the note names. They make this number 1, right? That's going to cause us a problem when we start to list out the chords, the 1, 4, 5, because then we're going to have to rename the shape and think about how to convert back and forth from the shape. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I just want to say, okay, if someone says I'm in A minor or they say I'm in Dorian or something, how could I then figure out what the related major is? Because the related major is the thing that's going to allow me to know where the whole shape lies. Once I know where the related major is, I could just shift this shape up to that proper location, stop looking at it from the note names, but rather look at it from the permanent structure, which is actually the names of the Nashville music system, if you want to see it that way, or the modes. Those are the things that stay constant. All right, so let's go back up and think of some exercises that we can do that. By the way, there's 3 ways that you can do that. Let's do one more thing. There's 3 ways that you can kind of do that. If someone says that, hey, I'm in A minor, I'm going to say, okay, I need to find the related major to know where the collection of notes are, to know where the shape is. So I could look at my fretboard and just know that, well, if that's the 6, then I could go 7, 8, meaning there's 2 modal half steps up to get to home. Meaning Nashville numbers system, for example, has 1 through 7. So if I'm on the 6, there's only going to be 1 more before it starts over. So I happen to know shape-wise that the C is that the major is going to be up here. It's going to be 3 notes up, or 2 modal half steps up from the A. So if I know the shape on my guitar, I can do that because I can count through it. I can say, well, I know the A is the 6. And I know that that's the 6 means that there's going to be 7, 8, or 1, 2 modal half steps up. But that's not enough to get there because the fact that I go 2 modal half steps up doesn't tell me the number of actual notes up, because there's 7 notes out of the 12 notes in the musical alphabet. But if I know where that is on the guitar and I know my shape, I can see where that is, and that'll help me to kind of figure it out. So the other way that we can do it is to use the formula whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half, and say I'm on the 6. So then I'm going to figure out the 6 is going to be a whole and then a half from that point within the formula to get me back to the 8 or the 1 to show me that the C is the collection of notes that we are on. You can also do it by interval. This is the last way to do it, where we could name the interval. I would like to name the interval by saying I want to know the distance between each of the modes. So I would call this an AI mode range, or a 6-1 mode range. What's the distance between the Aeolian and the Ionian, in other words? Well, it's 1, 2, 3. It's 3 notes away. It's a second modal half step. It's a 3 note away second modal half step, which from a scale degree, which would be the 3rd, right? But that's my terminology. You can also, most people will see it the other way. They're going to say, hey, whatever the major is, which in this case is the C. I don't know it's a C. I just know there's an A minor, but whatever the major is to get from the 1 to the 6, right? What's the distance to get from the 1 to the 6? It's going to be a 9 note away major 6, right? So we can then use that interval to figure it out. Okay, so those are the kind of like the 3 methods that we have